Chicago police reacting to a busy weekend with the president visiting late last week, NASCAR races, flash flooding, and even mass shootings. Back at it, Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. Just got a call from a listener off air. He called my cell thinking that it was the on-air number. It wasn't, but he asked an important question. I've seen this online, reverting back a little bit to the issue of litigation against Illinois' gun and magazine ban. The listener asks if one of the judges in the appeals court is one of the judges that Governor J.B. Pritzker donated to. No, that's not the case. All right, this is the federal court. Federal judges on the appeals court are appointed and confirmed by the U.S. Senate. Now, on the state Supreme Court, that's where you had two justices running for election last year that each got $1 million from Governor J.B. Pritzker. So those are the state Supreme Court justices where that question of impropriety is that hasn't been fully dealt with. So that's totally separate from the federal appeals court, where you've got the judges on the appeals court that are appointed and confirmed by the U.S. Senate. So totally different. Wanted to make sure we got that out there. We do have another call coming in. Let's go ahead and grab that here really quick before we get into Chicago police talking about a busy weekend. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Going once.
I'm sorry, that would be me?
That's you.
Okay, my thing is there's 50 million of us, 100 million probably, and we are facing fanatics in the numbers around maybe 7,000, 10,000. That's it, maybe nationwide. And it's really pitiful that we can't get a 5 million man march in Washington, D.C., or a 1 million man march in Springfield, or a 500,000 man march in Chicago. All this talking about lawsuits and, boy, they're going to take away our rights and they're bad people and they're Marxists and all this kind of stuff will not do anything when the press and actions and motivations and things like this are what's going to work. And we don't do any kind of actions at all, except for one march a year from the ISRA with colored shirts, which is great. But, I mean, we need people like myself who are businessmen, who are honest people, and we need to force the fact that honesty must be honored.
Well, and I'll tell you, even the White House was talking yesterday about how the vast majority of people support, quote, common sense gun legislation. I don't know if you really drill down into it if that's the case. So you're saying that there needs to be a public showing, not just the numbers of 2.4 million FOID card holders in the state of Illinois, let alone the tens of millions of gun owners who own tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, of semi-automatic firearms. You're saying that those numbers need to be seen on the streets.
Yes, absolutely. And wherever we see these 50 fanatics and these moms demand lying, these moms demand fanaticism. I mean, I know what it's like to lose a child. I know what it's like to get that phone call. And I don't demand that they do away with everybody that wants to smoke marijuana. My son was given some bad drugs by some scumbag and he died. So I don't go after every single person who's innocent that wants to smoke a joint. But this is what we're facing. We're facing fanatics who are trying to change the United States to something else, and they're holding me accountable, which is BS. And there's tens of millions of us that they're holding accountable. I mean, somebody comes by and kicks your dog, so then you're going to want all the neighbors to be held accountable for the one person that came by and kicked your dog. This is ridiculous. Yeah,
and I think that obviously showing public support one way or the other is effective, but so are lawsuits, right? Appreciate the call. Got a ton to get to here, but of course we'll be monitoring all of that ongoing as we do each and every morning. I'm Greg Bishop. Follow me anywhere, Bishop on Air, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Just search Bishop on Air, and we can connect that way. All right, let's talk about Chicago violence and a busy weekend over the weekend. Started late last week with President Joe Biden visiting Chicago. Then you had the NASCAR races going on. Then you had flash flooding going on. And while the numbers for Independence Day when it comes to violence were down from the year before, there were still some violent actions that took place even after Independence Day as the weather lifted. So here is the acting Chicago police superintendent yesterday talking about just the overall situation and how he feels they handled it.
I contribute a lot of it to the hard work that the men and women of the Chicago Police Department and all the agencies did this weekend. This was a big, big weekend. Probably, I don't remember in all the time I've been a policeman, a weekend where we had so many things clustered together, so many events on top of 4th of July was probably, historically, has been probably our most violent weekend. And the numbers were good up until, and we know, what we faced early this morning. Well, of course, it was very warm. A lot of people, a lot of gatherings, a lot of people were out. And that's almost a recipe for what we're seeing across the country, not just here in Chicago. But we try to have some tolerance and use some balance to tell people we want them to have a good time, but not to impede upon other people's rest and their peace when you start going into 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So we need to do a better job of dispersing some of those large gatherings. Well, we're still investigating it to see if it was something internal or if someone from outside shot into the crowd. When we have over 100 rounds of spent cartridges out, we know that didn't just come from one side, but we're still investigating that. I know we had one person that's deceased, and we give the condolences to that person's family, but we're still investigating that whole scene. It was very early in the morning, but the detectives were out there, and they're still out there now investigating that scene. We're looking back at, as far as hindsight, something more should have been done, but we're still looking at were there calls for service, what exactly happened up until the point that they were shooting. I know I saw some reports that said there was a small group of maybe 25 to 50 that increased over time as it went early into the morning.
So again, that's the acting Chicago police superintendent talking about responding to crime. And in one case, there being 100 shots fired at a gathering of an impromptu or an unsanctioned street party of sorts. But really, the other issues that popped up wasn't just, the mass presence of NASCAR on the streets and the flash flooding. You also had fireworks displays all over the place, and questions about how these were addressed by law enforcement, taking to the streets, responding to phone calls about fireworks going off, and even one large structure fire being blamed on illegal fireworks being fired off. And here is the acting superintendent talking about the priorities they had when it comes to addressing some of those calls for illegal fireworks.
It's not low on the totem pole when somebody, of course, a fire and somebody gets hurt, but we have to really pool our resources to do other things when we have calls, shots fired and people battering each other. So we have to really gauge what we're going to respond to as far as the fireworks.
But then there were questions about the violence.
You obviously are pleased with how things went with all these challenges beginning with President Biden's visit. So can you just talk a little bit about what was different this time? What made the violence numbers be a little bit better? What made you successful? Was it, because you don't have more officers. What was it your planning? Like what made the difference?
I'd like to say that the planning, but again, I give the credit to the men and women of the Chicago Police Department, the hard work that they do. I was over on 108th and Wentworth, where we had a large team gathering. I think the officers recovered about 6 guns from there. So that those engagements are like armed encounters, right? So in that, we keep people from being hurt. We dispersed the crowd, had a few arrests, but we got about 6 guns. So those type of events, when we're involved in those, that's when we do our best work. But this weekend, a lot of planning, a lot of long-term planning went into NASCAR, of course. We're always planning long-term for the 4th of July. Of course, the weather being what it was for NASCAR, I'm sure that kept some people off the street who normally would be on the street, and we see what happened yesterday early in the morning. So I still think that we did a great job overall. You can't say that to the people who lost their lives, that we did a great job, but the effort was there.
The effort was there, the acting superintendent for Chicago Police Department says. They say that they did a good job. Can't say that for those that lost their lives,
you obviously
but
are pleased
they
with how things-
could do better, he said. And I think that's going to be the mantra moving forward. What's the answer? How do we truly get to the root cause of all of this? That's a much larger conversation than just a 7-minute segment on a morning talk radio show.